Paul, you are an esports veteran, over 200 events done over all those years. How do you think esports changed, and what changed the most?
I think what changed the most is we're now standing in a stadium full of 15,000 people cheering on Counter-Strike players. That's probably the biggest change. 15 years ago I was sat in my bedroom doing commentary to 25 people on audio. So we've come a long way in the last 15 years. But yeah, everything's got better, isn't it? Teams have got more professional. 15 years ago they would often turn up to an event without even a set of shirts. They wouldn't have a team shirt, and that was considered quite weird at the time. So in every aspect we've gotten better and better.
All right, so in Poland we have a huge discussion right now if esports is a sport or if it should be a sport. What's your opinion on the matter?
Yeah, I've followed those conversations a little bit. I know you have some high-profile people in the government and local councils and what have you talking about whether it should be a sport or it shouldn't be a sport. The bottom line is this. In every definition of a sport, it is a sport except for the physicality. So if you ignore the physicality for a moment, is it competitive? Yes. Does it have organised tournaments? Yes. Does it have professional teams? Yes. Does it have a professional scene around it? Associations and what have you? Yes. So it ticks all of the boxes that a sport would ordinarily tick. You could argue chess is a sport. Now in the UK it's not classed as a sport, and I find that absurd. But at the same time, there's no physicality involved other than moving a few pieces, no more so than, say, a mouse or a keyboard. So I think if we want to call it a sport, I think it's okay. Whether governments call it a sport is different because they have a different set of criteria to measure it by. So it's much more difficult for them to classify it as a sport. And it also opens it up to Olympic funding and sports backup and schools and what have you. So it's important in one respect to get it classified as a sport in some countries, if not all, because it opens the door to more funding and more grassroots children being able to have access to esports. So it's good from that point of view, but from my personal point of view, does it need to be a sport? No, we're already there. We're already going out to millions of people around the world. We already have our own ecosystem. So I don't necessarily feel like we have to classify it as a sport. It's its own thing.
All right, and do you feel like it should be at the Olympic Games or it should get its own Olympic Games?
It's always difficult when people talk to me about the Olympics. I always felt 10 years ago like if we could get to the Olympics or even be a demonstration sport at the Olympics, it would open the door to bigger audiences and a wider pool of people that wanted to play in esports. Nowadays, I don't think we need that so much. I think actually the Olympics needs us. I don't think we need the Olympics anymore. And it's quite obvious that their demographic is waning when it comes to 16 to 30-year-olds, right? And that's where most of our fans are. They're in that 16 to 30-year-old demographic. So it makes a lot of sense for brands and sports and governments and Olympic committees to think about how do we engage with these people and what are they watching and what are they playing? And they come to esports because that's where the majority of them are. So the cynical part of me says actually they're doing this because they need that audience one day, and those fans are getting older and maybe the youngsters aren't interested in the Olympics. We have to remember that today's young people's heroes are YouTube streamers, Twitch streamers, esports players, talent and what have you. They're no longer the big movie stars, or the singers, songwriters, football players even. We have to understand that that's where they're going. So is it smart for the Olympics to look at adding some form of esport? Sure, absolutely. Do we need it? No.
All right. So you've talked that it's a big deal that we are at a stadium, right? That's standard for a sport. Yep. But how do you judge the atmosphere here in Krakow? How is it like?
The atmosphere and the audience here in the Toron Arena is unbelievable. It gives me goosebumps. Every time I step out there, I just have to step out and experience it because it's like being at a big sporting event, and the players, yeah, okay, they're playing a video game, whereas if you watch Cristiano Ronaldo on the field of football, you would look at him and you would probably go and watch because he's playing, right? Because you're not a particularly Real Madrid fan or a Barcelona fan or whoever they're playing, but you would go along to watch him because it's incredible what he can do with the football, and if he scores an overhead goal, it gives you goosebumps and the crowd cheer, right? Likewise, in our world, when a player like Pasha yesterday is 1 versus 4 other players in the game, even if you don't really understand Counter-Strike and you understand the importance of that round, it's almost impossible for him to win. So when he wins that round by getting rid of the other 4 players and then cheers and screams and shouts inside the booth, the crowd erupts on that, and I've got goosebumps even thinking about it now. It's no different from the Ronaldo overhead kick at a football stadium. You're just watching something brilliant.
All right, and you've done a lot of other events, mainly also the IEM Katowice, which is like the biggest esports event in Poland and even in Europe, I guess. How would you compare the crowd here in Krakow to IEM and other events around the globe?
Well, I think the crowd in Krakow is obviously a little bit bigger than it is in Katowice. Katowice has a unique feeling all of its own. I've been there 5 years now, and every time we go back, it's magical. Every year, the crowd are just absolutely amazing. But there are a few more thousand people here, so obviously they're a little bit louder than they are in Katowice. So maybe we can start some sort of comparison, and maybe they can compete against each other for loudest crowd of the year. But they're always all the Polish fans are always super passionate about esports. Never more so than when their own team are playing, obviously, and when Virtus Pro are playing, yes, the crowd get louder, but they're super passionate about all of esports, all of the players. I remember back at Katowice, we used to have 3 finals on one stage during the day. It was StarCraft, it was League of Legends, and Counter-Strike. They would cheer for every team, even if they didn't really understand the game or they didn't know that match. So, they're super passionate fans of esport in Poland, so I think that's great. In terms of worldwide, I think the only other crowd I can think of that's given me that kind of goosebumps was probably in Manila, because that's 20,000 people in the Mall of Asia arena, and then a Filipino player comes out on the stage in Fnatic, and the roof felt like it was going to fall off, and everything vibrated, and my chest hurt. That was pretty crazy. So yeah, they're right up there.